I think most of us can agree that we were in complete shock to see how the national team performed today. In this video, I'll be going over my thoughts about the USA versus Ecuador game. Starting with the lineup, today Ecuador played with Pervis, Pacho, Ordóñez, Franco, Alcibar, Vite, Baez, Yeboah, Preciado, and Valencia. And off the bat, I don't think that was the worst lineup possible. In fact, I think it was pretty reasonable. I think that many of us probably wouldn't start Alcibar, but we knew that he'd be playing. From the beginning to when Ener Valencia scored, I did get the impression that the US was pretty much dominating for most of the game in all parts of the field. And when Valencia scored, I thought that maybe this was going to be a game that could easily set the tone, and with that first goal, and maybe from that point forward, Ecuador would regain a little bit of the ball and try to keep possession. Because I remember with the previous games that we had, and also with Argentina, we conceded spaces on the field. We allowed Argentina to build for some parts of the game, but after that, we ended up being the ones to dominate the game. And from the very beginning, I was completely fine with the U.S. dominating us and winning most of the ball on different parts of the field, because I had felt that maybe as the game progressed, we would regain control of the game. Ultimately, we ended the half with the U.S. dominating, the U.S. controlling the game, and I think we saw Calindez have two important saves. Pacho managed to break or keep passes that the U.S. tried to filter in to break that defensive line away, and for the most part, I think because of those two, we ended the first half winning 1-0. And besides ending the first half with the U.S. dominating, we had Pervis Estupiñán getting injured in for what I think the most silly way. He overcommitted, trying to regain the ball halfway into the field. It wasn't even in our own third, and I think that could have been completely avoided. And he has a history with getting injured around his ankles, so I think that that's exactly where that injury came about again. We also saw Baez also feel, I don't know what exactly happened to him, but he was limping closer to the end of the first half, so things got really bad for us at that point. Going into the second half, I knew that a key thing was to be able to press a little bit higher, have those interceptions come about on their own half, on the US's own half, and I don't think that we managed to accomplish that. I think that the US proposed a very intense and a very quick game. If you notice, every ball that they regained, they quickly try to go on the attack. Most of their movements was always forward, almost never going back. And as soon as they lost the ball, they were quick to regain it. So they were really fast, and they were very intense. I think that the manager made the right decision with substitutions and keeping the team fresh. But the idea was always to be very intense in all moments of transition. To start the second half, we also had Nilson Angulo and Medina come on. With Medina, I don't think he had a bad game. I do think that he is still missing that bit of chemistry with the rest of the team, but I do think that as the game progressed, he involved himself a lot more in the attack, and I was actually happy to see that, as opposed to Angulo, where he had a quick impact, but as the game progressed, he went quiet. In the second half, we also had Kevin Rodriguez going for Yeboah, and it was a difficult game for Kevin Rodriguez. because it was a game that required very smart decision making with the ball. It required him to help us actually keep possession and be able to hold on to the ball a little bit more than what we're used to. And we all know he's not that type of player. So he wasn't as effective in the build-ups when we really needed him. Halfway into the second half, the US scores from a very intense press, a very high press, where Pacho finds himself in a situation to just gamble with a pass forward that gets intercepted and sets up a goal for the US, which I honestly think with VAR would have been called offside. I do think that he was offside. But obviously with these kind of games, I guess you don't want to use that as an excuse. Ultimately, I think that even prior to 10 minutes before the goal, we started seeing a very tired Ecuador, a very lazy Ecuador, a very unorganized Ecuador that just kept on allowing the US to keep on attacking them. And, I think that Pacho really found no way out of that situation. And that's where I realized that we really miss Caicedo. Because if you realize in this game, I think Vite, for the most part, was their main connection to move forward in the midfield. Alcivar doesn't really give you that. So I think that going forward, I think we really have to find a solution for not having Caicedo. After the goal and to the end of the game, we also had Campana come in for Ener Valencia and Denil Castillo for Jordi Alcivar. And Castillo is a player that I would have liked to see a lot earlier in the game and maybe even start the game, because I think he came within like the last 5 minutes of the game. And Campana, we played, I think, for the most part in our own half, so it's a very tough game to call and to even say anything about Campana. I do think that maybe he should be given a decent amount of playing time versus Mexico. I don't know if he can be much of a difference, but you can't say anything about him about this game. So we'll see what Becachese does versus Mexico. Ultimately, I think that this was such a shocking game for me because we came from beating Argentina and dominating most of the game. We played versus Brazil and dominated most of the game. We played away in Paraguay and dominated most of the game. In Peru, also and dominated for a big chunk of the game. And to just see us not be able to do that at all here, I think it's very worrying. And I guess in a sense it's a good thing to have this happen now as opposed to the first game of the World Cup. So, it's Becachese's responsibility to see what he can do better, because it's very clear that our biggest weakness is this complete, intense 90-minute games where eventually we'll crack. Even though we have the best defense, we will crack. And again, I don't think that Alcivar is the alternative for Caicedo. I think that Becachese needs to realize that quick. But we'll see how the game versus Mexico goes. Hopefully we don't have a similar situation to today's game.